please.
I need roll call slips. Okay, I'll just do it.
Okay.
Commissioner Abraham,
Present.
Commissioner Galt,
Present.
Commissioner
Here.
Rhodes, Commissioner Wilson,
Present.
Mayor.
Present. Commissioner Abraham has graciously agreed to do our invocation tonight, and our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be done by Palmer Stroop, a Paducah Tillman High School student. So, Commissioner.
Can we stand? Father, we thank you for a brand new year. We thank you for brand new opportunities to reflect your character. Help us examine ourselves to appreciate each other more. Help us look back on 2014 and those things that were godlike, our personalities, our attitudes, moving forward. Help us to realize those areas that we need to adjust to reflect your character. Help us love each other. These things we ask in Yeshua's name.
Amen. Palmer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. City Manager, are there any additions or deletions?
There are none.
Tonight, I had the pleasure of presenting a Duke of Paducah to Fowler Black, but before I bring him up to present him with this Duke of Paducah Award, Fowler was recently named a top leader of the next generation in group travel. Groups Today magazine recognized Fowler Black, Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau, sales director as one of the top 10 people of the next generation who make a difference in group travel industry with their creative ideas and entrepreneurial spirit. Fowler was has promoted Paducah as a destination for group tour and travel and meetings, sports events for 10 years as the Paducah CVB sales director. Connect Sports also recognized Fowler's efforts with the 2014 Sports Tourism Excellence Award. Groups Today is a community for group travel professionals offering editorial content with importance to travel planners and suppliers nationwide. So Fowler, not only this is the reason I'm making you a Duke tonight, but because you do so many other things within the community, and you exemplify that community spirit and that young community spirit. So if you'll come up here. So tonight, to all to whom these presents shall come, know ye that Fowler Black is named a Duke of Paducah. I hereby confer this honor with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto appertaining, in testimony whereof I have caused these letters to be made patent, and the seal of the city to be hereunto affixed, done at Paducah the 6th day of January, in the year of our Lord 2015, Gail Kaler, Mayor. Congratulations, and thank you for everything.
And I think he's the only Paducah idol.
And tonight we have recognition. We have the Paducah Tillman High School speech team here. If they will come forward. How many do we have down here?
Whole squad.
Mm-hmm. Hello. Who's the leader here tonight? Okay, come on up and talk a little bit about your speech team competition and your achievement. as a speech team from Paducah Tillman. You're to be congratulated. You've all done very well. And I'd like for each one of you to come up to the microphone and introduce yourself at the end.
I'm Meg Hancock. I'm a junior on the speech team, and Palmer and I are co-captains. And the Tillman speech team, it's probably one of the largest organizations that Tillman has, and we're really quite proud of it because we've really had some awesome accomplishments this year. For example, our coach Martha Emmons was named Coach of the Year this year, so that's pretty amazing that our coach here is Coach of the Year. And we have several members of our team are on the Kentucky All-State team, which is the top top ranking people in the state. And I think we have 13. I think we have 13 people on our team that are on the All-State team, which is pretty amazing. And we've taken first places at several tournaments, like Bronte Green and Michael Hassel, who isn't here. Our most recent tournament at Western Kentucky University, they won improvisational duo, and we've had several first place in other areas, which has been really wonderful. So yeah, Palmer, if you want to say anything.
Among with the other accomplishments our team has gotten, what I really love about our team is how it draws all the students together and really brings them out of their shell, if you will. Speech takes all different types of students in with the School of Tillman. It really brings them into their own, and I think really develops their true character that they can use to spread out into the community and such. As we had the Dickens of a Christmas thing, we had a few students come out and we helped with that, and we just really like to get ourselves out there and try and be the most fun and active people we can be in our little community. So.
Okay. Have each person come up and just introduce themselves, please.
I'm Michael Ellen Walden.
I'm Bronte Green.
I'm John Holker.
I'm Marco Garcia.
I'm Carter Vaughn.
I'm Landon Rutherford.
I'm Claire Kelly.
I'm Catherine Winfield.
And I'm Reagan Davidson.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Go Paducah Tillman. So just to segue right into this, I have a proclamation tonight and a recognition for Paducah Independent Schools. And here tonight with us is Dr. Felix Sakoji, Rose Lowry, Carla Boone, Janice Howard, and Danette Humphrey. And these are all Paducah City School Board members. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your hard work for our school systems here in Paducah and the excellence that we have with those schools. So I have a proclamation for you. So I'll read it and then come up there and give it to you all, each one of you.
As well as Donald Chavley, their superintendent, is here with us as well tonight, too.
Good to see you here. A proclamation to all to whom these presents shall come. Whereas the greatest resource of this or any community and its people, and from that resource comes an element vital to the community's future, the success of its children. And whereas that success depends largely on those children being able to amass knowledge and skills that will aid in their individual development and advancement in life. And whereas our Paducah Public Schools are an integral element in our children's development through excellence in classroom instruction and life lessons about citizenship and involvement. And whereas key players in a well-rounded, effective public school system are the community's representatives who are elected to the Board of Education. And whereas the members of the Board of Education have proven themselves as dedicated advocates for a safe learning environment for their students and for professional growth for their faculty and staff. And whereas January 2015 marks Kentucky's participation in a multi-state observation of continuing contributions by these outstanding local leaders and their peers elsewhere. Now therefore, I, Gail Kaler, Mayor of the City of Paducah, do hereby declare the month of January 2015 2015 as School Board Recognition Month in Paducah, and urge all citizens to honor our Board of Education for their devotion to the shared good of a better life for our children and our future leaders. In witness whereof, I have caused these to be affixed, done January the 6th, 2015. So Donald, if you would like to come up, please, and School Board, please. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Do y'all want to say anything? Would you like to say something? Yes. Can I get a photo of that? Oh, sure. Sure.
And he doesn't seem to mind.
I will say something, Mayor.
All right.
I just want to say thank you on behalf of the school board and our school system for taking the time to recognize us tonight. I also just, when you see the speech team up here and their diversity and their energy and their hard work, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for what the students in our system are doing and what they are accomplishing. I've had the opportunity to go to Christmas programs and band concerts at Clark and at some of our other schools, at the middle school, at the high school this year. And if you can just sometime when you all have the opportunity to attend some of those events, I think you'll just really appreciate what type of school system we have here, what our school leadership is doing, the superintendents, the teachers in the school, and just the diverse range of the diverse just amount of opportunities our students have. I think we have a lot to be proud of with our school system here, and greatly appreciate the commissioners, the mayors, your ongoing community support. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda tonight is a report on the floodwall mural annual report. Roe Morris, come on up.
We're going to be looking to the people to do what we're doing.
Yeah, that's right.
We're taking names because we're looking to you all to do things like the floodwall murals in the future. So that was exciting just hearing them.
Thank you.
To give you all hot off the printer.
Hot off the smells like the mimeograph machine, right? Can you remember the mimeograph machine had that?
Thank you.
No, I've just heard of it. Knock that out.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if you all have looked at PaducahWallToWall.com lately, but the drone that we had hoped would video our project, have you all seen it? If you haven't, be sure to go when you get home tonight online and see. But it is Paducah at Christmas, and you know that we won last year the designation of TripAdvisor, the #1 attraction in the state of Kentucky. And when you look at that project from the air and you get the feel of what it's all about, it kind of makes you realize we're here all the time and we've seen it develop, and we kind of take it for granted sometimes. But the Paducah Wall-to-Wall Advisory Board, as we were originally formed in 1996, this will be our 20th painting season this year. And we've come back as a 501c3 umbrellaed under Growth Incorporated right now. And we will have our own 501c3 status at any time now. Growth goes in a fiscal year, and it will end the end of June. We will have an audit from then at that time, because that's when that we didn't want to ask for a special one. But we'll have an audit from them. What you have in front of you is just a little cover letter thanking you for your support last year. The year before, we were advised to go to our city manager for funding this year for mural maintenance, for Dafford muralists to continue to maintain the floodwall murals, and that's what we did. We worked with Mark Thompson, the director of parks, and with our city manager. You see an agreement there in front of you. The city paid $18,750. Originally, when we quit doing maintenance, our board of volunteers and the city took over that, there was a commitment of $25,000 a year. Last year when we met with the city manager, he came up with the $18,750 and asked us to do, I think it was $6,000 and something the first year, $225. If you look at those itemized expenditures, I think we spent almost $8,000, and you can see where every penny went. Every penny that the city spent went directly to putting paint on that wall and paying the artists for their work. We came back in and paid for portions of things like scaffolding, which Paducah Scaffolding pays for almost all of that themselves. It's a volunteer contribution that they make each year. Over $3,000 in just the accommodations for them to stay in downtown. And I have to tell you that of the money that was paid to the muralist, I don't know, I didn't ask them for an itemized expenditure, but the money that they spent eating in downtown Paducah, gas, going to movies, drinking coffee at et cetera, eating at Kirchhoff's, eating at the Gold Rush, eating at the downtown restaurants. It's awesome what happens. They loved being downtown. We want to make sure they're in downtown or lower town every time they come because Herb lost 20 pounds riding his bicycle. Herb arrived a little bit before Robert, about 3 weeks before him this year. Robert was in New Orleans painting, and it kept raining and raining, and so Herb kept painting and painting here. We're very pleased with the work that they have done and the community's support of that mural project down there. It just continues to grow. We have the possibility of painting some new murals this year if and when the train is moved. If that happens, we already have sponsors lined up to paint behind the train. And we have an inventory that's been taken last fall. They will be back in town in February to look at it and make sure that what has weathered the way they anticipated it would. And we'll be back with you next month to talk to you about some funding for maintenance again. What we will do, you can look at those deposits, $25, $15, $45, you know, selling books and t-shirts and postcards. That's what we do to raise the money that offsets what the city commits to mural maintenance. Does anybody have any questions about what's in front of you? It's pretty primitive. It just comes from our bank statement. It's every penny that goes in and every penny that comes out.
Pretty easy.
That's from when we started again in July through the end of December.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you all. It's a tremendous project, and we appreciate your support.
Okay, we'll go on to appointments. Commissioner Abraham will read this after I read it. Whereas subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners and jointly with the McCracken County Judge Executive, I hereby reappoint Glenn Anderson to the Paducah McCracken County Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. This term will expire December 31st, 2017.
I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the action of Mayor Kaler, jointly with the McCracken County Judge Executive, in reappointing Glenn Anderson as a member of the Paducah McCracken County Convention and Visitors Bureau Board.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt? Aye. Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kaler?
Aye. Under motions, Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that Commissioner Allen Rhodes, Jr. be nominated and elected Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Paducah to serve in this capacity until the expiration of his present term as City Commissioner.
Second.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Made me sweat. As long as,
Okay,
at least I don't have to try to go backwards blindfolded.
As has been pretty much a tradition with the commission over the years. The highest vote getter is nominated Mayor Pro Tem, and that would be Commissioner Alan Rhodes this term, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll be calling on you often.
I'm right around the block.
So we need to vote on this?
Yes. Commissioner Abraham.
Aye.
Commissioner Galt.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye.
It's not. Well, it wouldn't be very fair.
Congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. I'll spit in your coffee.
Good thing I don't drink coffee.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Under municipal orders, Commissioner Rhodes, please.
All right. Upon the recommendation of the city manager, the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah order that the personnel changes on the attached list be approved.
Need a second?
Second.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. There's a lot on there, but it only amounts to one new hire at this point. One of the police recruits has to be pushed back due to a scheduling problem, and you see that on there. And then the good news is there is a building inspector being hired into the fire prevention division.
Steve, the period of time that we've been short there is, what, 4 months, something like that?
Yeah, Brian Wicks has been gone at least that long. He went back to his home state. So this individual is from the area. His parents live in the area. He's been working in California as an architect. So I think he'll be a fantastic addition to the team downstairs and should bring a lot of value to the city.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham.
Aye.
Commissioner Galt.
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. We'll go into our workshop now. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor Kayler. We want to talk to you tonight and give you an update on what's happening with 911. As you all know, 911 is one of our core services that the city and county have come together to provide jointly to aid in the emergency response of our respective agencies. In that sense, it's a very vital, very essential service for the community. Briefly, in recognition of some challenges that were and continue to be before us, be it funding, staffing, what have you, about a year ago, the 911 Board commissioned a study. A presentation was made to the City Commission and Fiscal Court, respectively, and the 911 Board last April that contained a number of recommendations, identified some of the areas that needed to be addressed. Subsequent to that, the 911 Board began a investigation into an alternative provider of 911 services, that being the Kentucky State Police. That analysis has been ongoing now for several months. There's been some information come out of the 911 group, and has been noted by the media with respect to the projected cost and projected cost savings. There's not been a lot of information come out about the important points of comparison between the KSP model and what we have now. So we thought it was timely tonight for your information as well as the public to bring some of that information forward. So Chief Kyle, with the assistance from Chief Barnhill, are going to make a presentation to you tonight regarding the current situation with respect to 911 and the prospect for an alternative service provider.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing me to come forward to talk to you about this tonight. This is a very important issue for our community, and in my belief, and I think Chief Barnhill's belief, probably the most important service that we provide in our community. As far as our jobs go, everything starts with 911. Without that linchpin for how we provide our services, we couldn't do a very good job of that. In leading into this proposal tonight, I wanted to give you a little bit of background, kind of where we are. The City Manager did a pretty good job of that already. There's only a couple of things I want to add to that. History, creation of the board. This all came together in about 1990, 1991. Before that time, each of the agencies in the county dispatched on their own. which is to say they had their own dispatch centers. The fire department did it out of number 1. The PD did it out of City Hall here, and county agencies did theirs as well. That's back in the 7-digit dialing days. So in the early 90s, we came together, we formed instead of even doing a city dispatch or a county dispatch, they came together for a county-wide dispatch, formed an interlocal agreement, and that's what we've been operating under ever since. A couple years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I was a little shocked by the timeline of it, even myself, as I was putting this presentation together. Almost 3 years ago, we started to identify some issues that really needed to be addressed. Those concerned training, staffing. We were having personnel issues, policy issues, and just looking at the agency and its identity as a whole. That's what led to the consultant hiring. At the time, we had our director left right prior to that, and it was a good opportunity for us to review the agency collectively to see where we needed to refocus our efforts and try to plot a path going forward. The consultant's report addressed several issues. You had that presentation in March of 2014, highlighted the areas that we needed to focus on. Those were alternative funding. As you know, the landline usage is going down, and as a result, our revenue to operate the agency has been declining over that same time, while simultaneously the cell phone funding stream has not been addressed by the legislature to provide enough funding there to maintain the facility. So as a result, you guys in the county alike have been supplementing that with general fund dollars. So that's the first thing that the consultant report addressed, was that we needed to look at our alternative funding opportunities. Other things, facility modifications, staff restructuring, saw some opportunities there. Some talks about being a city or county department, somebody having ownership of the agency to solve a lot of our potentially our personnel problems and policy problems that we were having at the time. The board size and its governance, we've got an 11-member board for the operation that we have, and in the consultant's report, they felt that was a very large governing body compared to the agencies that are the heaviest users. And then another thing that they recommended was the ambulance dispatch merger. So we had all those things in March, and following that presentation, we had a special called meeting where we sat down and developed committees to work on each of these items. While that was going on, there was a presentation asked for from the fiscal court for Captain Kent to make a proposal for dispatch services. And that kind of, once that occurred, the consultant report and subsequent committee work really came to a full stop as that became the focus of all the energy and understanding the proposal and what it was all about and what it entailed and how it would occur if it did. So what I've done here is I've highlighted a couple of things. As you can see, we've been involved in this for a pretty good while. That started in May, and you can see that we had some recommendations in pursuit of the proposal. And then we got the presentation ourselves in June. The fiscal court had it in May, we had it in June. After that presentation and the recognition that we could go on for a while without identifying a director because we didn't know where we were going to go, you all had the wherewithal to support a recommendation that came from Chief Barnhill about putting Captain White over there to get control of our operation and provide strong leadership during this time, which David has done a fantastic job. He's worked on a lot of things that we identified needed to be worked on in terms of policy and trying to clean up a lot of the areas that needed some work, and has been a tremendous resource. And I want to thank Brandon for doing that, offering David up, because he took him away from his operation and put him at 911, and that's a big deal. I know it would be a big deal if I took one of my staff members and did it, and I know how big a deal it was for Brandon to detail him over there. So I want to thank him for that. But since that time, you've seen that we've been heavily engaged in requests for information. KSP came down and did a site visit during that time. And what I would say about KSP is they're typically in a position to when people come to them for a proposal, they're in dire straits. The county that I'm originally from, Hickman County, asked for a proposal here not too long ago from them, where, because they were having trouble funding their dispatch service. So in that scenario, KSP is able to lay out a plan. Here's what we can do for you, and you're able to decide whether you want to do that or not. We see our position differently than that. That we're not in the same position that a lot of those smaller communities are, where we're able to dig into a proposal that they have to kind of dissect it to see if it would be good for us. So that's what we've spent a lot of time doing. There's been a lot of additional requests for information because we didn't feel like we had enough information to make a solid recommendation to you. One thing I've learned in watching others put proposals together for you all is you don't like surprises, and we don't blame you for that. So if Brandon and I were going to support a proposal to come forward, we wanted to make sure that we had nailed down as much of it as we could in order for you to be able to make an informed decision. We didn't want a big surprise of an additional cost after we had decided to make a decision like that, and then that come back on Brandon and I. So we've been extremely cautious in our approach to that because, well, for a couple of reasons. Because of that, but because we believe we have a good service to begin with and don't believe we should just bypass that as a result of another proposal being made. So we've been very cautious. As you can see, the board, in addition, has supported this and asked for that information to come forward. As you'll see there down at the bottom, after the last request, we found, and this is Brandon and I making this assessment, that the responses weren't adequate to make an informed decision, that we didn't have enough information. And as you can see, we've requested lots of information, but we still believe that there are major underlying questions that would involve cost that we can't answer at this time. Excuse me, just while I reference my notes right quick before I move on. And even as we started down this road to look at the proposal from the state police, we wanted to make sure that we looked at the proposal for the right reasons, that it wasn't just about the money at the end of the day. We wanted to look at the service, where our community was going to be left, what we believe the citizen expects in terms of service for this use or this service, so that we can make a good decision and make a good recommendation to you. So this is after the last request, that's where we received the most information. Here's our concerns that remained, and these are the things that I'm going to go into individually as we go through the rest of the presentation. Redundancy, and that redundancy means for anything we do in our world, a backup has to have a backup, okay? Because typically we deal with a failure in one item, so the alternate item has to come up online and work properly, and an alternate behind that. 911, a question we get all the time is, you could what if anything to death. Well, 911 is the what if. You wouldn't be calling 911 if you didn't have the what if situation. So we're required to have some of these things by standard, or all these things by standards that exist out there that the service is measured against, and those where our questions came from in terms of trying to answer those questions. The staffing level to be provided. The staffing level we have now as opposed to what they're saying that they would bring online. Services that we believe are being lost as a result of an acceptance of the proposal to go to state police. Other items of significance that we believe are important. And then after we get through that, you're still going to have annual costs. It's not boiling down to a simple number and that's it. There's other things that play into that, and then what we believe are still unknown costs. The redundancy item. NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. It so happens that the fire service probably has the biggest standards making body out there in terms of things that apply to other disciplines other than fire. But it requires that we have two ways for our radio system to work. Only one was provided for in the proposal. That was a connection through a computer line from Mayfield to here. As commonly happens, guys cutting trenches, guys digging with backhoes, cut lines like that all the time. And as you know from just your cell phone service, that can be a lengthy period of time that might be down, or your home phone service. So a backup has to be provided for. And there's cost associated with that as well. Another item to consider. Currently, we are the backup for Post 1, and they are our backup. So if we don't exist any longer, Post 1 has to have another backup. The proposal indicated that would be Post 2 in Madisonville. We don't believe that to be a sufficient option because Post 2 is not operating like Post 1. Post 1 is a public safety answering point that has other entities and communities that they answer the phone for and dispatch for. Post 2 just does the state police. So there's capacity issues there and connectivity issues that we believe are important. Lack of connectivity to KSP under the current system. Now it's about to get really technical. Our radio is old. It's obsolete. Parts aren't made for it anymore. They're not made for the consoles that the dispatchers sit at and punch the buttons to talk to us. They're not made anymore either. Obsolete, which is why you heard us here a while back talking about upgrading our radio and consoles and so forth. State police are in the same situation with their consoles. Our vendor, JP Two-Way, has told us that there's no parts for us to connect our current system to state police. So that's almost a deal breaker right there. The state police have made a proposal and associated parts needed for upgrade in that. I believe those are coming from maybe some supplies that they might have. I'm not sure if they have them. But at the end of the day, our system and their system are obsolete, and you can't buy new parts for it to make it work, okay? Limited console positions. This is a little tricky as well. We have 5 at the center that we have right now. 5 and 5 only. If we moved to Mayfield, Mayfield would only be able to have 5. Now they may have 12, but only 5 would work with ours, and those would be dedicated, in other words. They work with that console and that console only. So a dispatcher down here on position 12 that wasn't part of the 5 couldn't talk to us or interact with us, which creates communication problems and ability to answer problems when those 5 dispatchers on those 5 consoles will be tied up. I hope I'm not losing you here. It's a terribly complex issue, and I'm trying to make it as simple as can be, so bear with me. If there's anything you don't understand, please feel free to ask. Let me say one other thing about the radio before I move off this slide. Frequently, when thunderstorms come through, lightning strikes our tower over here. That knocks our communication system offline. When that happens, we have to talk radio to radio. What that means before that is the radio has to go, under normal circumstances, the radio goes from the radio to the tower to the radio that I'm calling. So if Brandon and I are talking, I'm talking to him on this, but it's going to the tower and then coming back to him. When the tower's offline, we're talking radio to radio. We switch to a special channel to do that, so he and I can connect. We can't get more than about 5 miles with that. If our dispatch center is in Mayfield and our tower is knocked offline or our computer cable is cut, we can't talk to Mayfield from here or Hickory from here. It's just not, it's not possible. They won't do that. Our system won't do that. So I wanted to leave you with that thought before we move on. Staffing, second important issue to us. Staffing is what started part of this whole discussion, actually. Almost 3 years ago now, we were experiencing some problems with the dispatch center, and some of it we felt like might have been personnel driven, attitudes, behavior, that kind of stuff. But really what we were trying to dig into to figure out is if our volume was impacting our employees' ability to provide the service. In other words, the volume coming in over the telephone or the radio was overwhelming them, and they were experiencing an inability to talk back to us or answer the phone or, you know, whatever. And just to give an example of that, we have a wreck out there on the interstate. Everybody and their brother dials 911. So it immediately loads the system, overloads the system. And if there's a dispatchers while that emergency is going on, they're talking to us, they're trying to talk to people on the phone. But 3 or 4 people in the room over there can't handle that kind of volume, okay? So what drove this conversation was that we were starting to see maybe that our regular operations, not a one-time event just like that, but our regular daily operations were potentially having that kind of impact on our dispatchers. Y'all follow that? So that's what got us into the staffing discussion to begin with. So we enter the KSP proposal here, and we have 18 dispatchers total, split up across our shifts. They propose to add 10 to their operation for our volume. 2 per shift, basically, for all of McCracken County. And you see 10 there, but you're building in sick, vacation, holidays, that kind of stuff. So that's your shift factor that you build in. That's where you get the 10. But our consultant recommendation that you had in front of you from March recommended we go to 4 in the room at all times. So there may be, they have an argument that they've got expanded capacity from the other dispatchers in the room that aren't being used at the time. We can't, the problem that I have with that, we've asked for their equation to better understand how they come up with their number. We've not been able to get that in terms of the specific metrics that they use to decide how many dispatchers should be there. But we have trouble believing that they can absorb that much volume without that information that would be able to handle us with just 10. We can't believe that there's that much left in the room from the other counties that have merged with them. And when we talked specific staffing questions and with the request for information we got, a lot of their answers were staffing levels are discretionary and ultimately the decision of the appointing authority of the Kentucky State Police. We will staff as necessary to meet the service level agreement between our agencies. Now, that can't answer, I understand that. I understand they want to have that control. It's their agency, they should have that control. But as a user or a potential customer of that service, I believe I have a right to fully understand the service level they're going to provide our community so that I'm making sure my community gets the service they deserve. And we don't feel like we got that with what was shared. You might be better to talk this one than me. Law enforcement volume was just one of the things that we looked at. One of the things that was easily able to pull. David pulled these numbers and put these together. If KSP were to add just Paducah Police Department and McCracken County Sheriff's Department, now that's just 2 agencies out of all the agencies that we have in this county. But they're high volume agencies. They have a high demand on the service that we have already. In comparison to what the state police take care of now, these are the increases they would see. So if you compare the increases in percentage to only a smaller number of people being added to dispatch, we don't believe that correlates very well. Okay? We're raising their demand significantly, but they're not recommending that their staffing level increases that much. So as you can see, there is an additional point. None of that includes the fire department, county fire, DES, emergency management, animal control, which is an extremely high user, or EMS. So what does all that mean if they don't have enough people and our demand is so high that they can't handle it? That means that we're all at risk. Okay? That means you all accept that risk as a city commission for the community, that the service might not be what it's supposed to be. Services not included in the KSP proposal. Our 911 center does a lot of things for us outside of just dispatching. Something I learned even today, I thought I understood the issue, but as I re-questioned Ben Peterson about it, I figured out I didn't understand it quite as well as I should. And as Ben told me before we hung up, he said, I hope you can summarize. I don't think you can summarize that in a couple of sentences. I said, yeah, but I'm going to try. So our GIS integration, KSP is going to use their own GIS. So that puts us in a position to try to update the state's GIS with our data, which starts to become more of a complex situation. It's not unforeseen, but here's what I learned about our GIS and their dependence on 911 that I didn't know. 911 serves as the collection point for all of the addressing issues that we have. If there's an address issue, they run it to ground. They go to PVA, they go to the engineering office, they go to the county road department to resolve all these issues, because usually they're the ones that identify that we have issues. This allows our GIS to stay up to date in real time and easily accessible. Any updates that are sent to GIS from 911 get placed on there, and the dispatcher has that information back in real time because they're pulling from our GIS data. So as I was asking Ben what that impact might be, he's not real sure. He said, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to figure out that. We're going to have to figure out if we have, where our problems are, because we're not going to be getting that like we normally would through our 911 center. And then we're going to have to figure out who resolves it, because 911 is doing that for us right now. Pretty big impact to our GIS system that was just really unknown. Loss of historical CAD information. We have a tremendous amount of history on individuals, on property, violent offenders, as you see, special needs. For the police officer or the firefighter that are making a call to a specific address, the dispatchers have at their fingertips all that history to be able to tell us what we need to be alert for. We transition to another agency. This puts us in a position to have to recollect all that information. Typically, in terms of software, it's a monumental cost to try to convert one brand of software to another for the terms of the historical data. We don't have a cost for that amateurized out for you. We're kind of taking it that we would have to recollect all that information. The bottom item there is monitoring of the public safety cameras. We've had quite a bit of infrastructure improvement in our community from the public safety cameras, the Greenway Trail, the Riverfront, and other of those places. 911 are the people that look at those right now. If they're not looking at it, we're not sure who would be available to do that. The thing to understand about 911 is it is your 24-hour call point for the county. If it's in Hickory, that's fine. You can call Hickory, but you're not going to get what's local to you here. They're not looking at those types of things. It's just not part of their service level. And I think it'd be unreasonable to expect that it would be, because you're looking more vertical in your regional providing of those services. They can't drill down as deep as you can here at the local level. And that's an advantage of having it at the local level. The 911 folks also serve as our radio administrator right now. What's that mean to you? Well, that means we've got full-time staff bodies to run all of our radio issues to ground. If we were to merge, we're still going to have radio issues, and we're going to have to figure out who's going to do that collectively for the city. Otherwise, all the departments are identifying their own body to try to do that. And as you can see, that'd probably be an inefficient way to handle that. That's a full-time job just by itself, in case you're wondering. Significant item here, loss of your full-time weather alert activation, okay? Tornado sirens, you can still activate them, but 911 is the place where those get activated. That's staffed 24 hours a day. As I said before, they're the only 24-hour staffed operation here that does that kind of work. Now, the police department, fire department, they've got 24-hour people, but they're not doing that kind of work. They're responding to these events. So it's a difference It's a different level of service. Could you send that to KSP? Yeah, but do you want to? I mean, you want to have that button close by because you know what the threat is, okay? You don't want to have to worry about radios going down or phones going down or anything like that. DOE site's another issue. We talked with April Tilford out there. They're one of their emergency managers. We serve as their backup activation for their sirens right now. She wasn't sure what they would do if we weren't here, okay? That's something important for that part of our immediate part of our community out there that surrounds the DOE site. Loss of our ability to communicate with public work agencies, at least through 911, and direct access to audio log. Audio log is everything we do is recorded over there. I have a username and password. The PD has username, and that's our quality assurance. We're able to go back and look at a call. If we have somebody that complains of a call, we can go back and listen to the whole thing from my computer in my office and review that call, make copies of that call, just hear the whole thing and be able to do the quality assurance that needs to be done to follow up on it. I won't have that direct access. And then the local attorneys are another aspect of that. Brent Stringer, who is our assistant director, estimates he spends somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 hours a week answering calls for service from the local attorneys related to court cases. Tremendous amount of time making access for them. What does that mean for the local attorney? Well, he won't be able to get it here. It'll take additional time. It won't be as easily accessible. He'll have to go to Mayfield to get it. This slide's specific to me, to the fire department. The CAD is the computer-aided dispatch. Dispatchers over there have a computer screen. They have a software program. Whenever a 911 call comes in, they start entering information into that program. That program or that call ships to me. We've been doing that for about 17 years, where it comes into my reporting software, automatically uploads, we finish out the narrative, and it's done. We would not have that if we transitioned to KSP. As it sits right now, we would not have that. I mean, that thing connects my whole system. 911 connects to my incidents connect to my staffing, and my staffing connects to payroll. It is about as automated as you can get. We used to do, it took 2.5 days to do payroll. We got it down to an hour or two now. It's just an efficiency of how that system works together. They would email me my CAD information now. I wouldn't have it. The truck would not have it in the truck as they're responding to the call, which is they're going to hear, are we still going to hear the call over the radio? Sure. But as the guys will tell you, when they're coming down the stairs or sliding down the pole, there's all kinds of echo. You're trying to get to the truck to get your gear on so you can respond to the call. You're going to have to call that dispatcher back 3 to 4 more times. What we noticed when we implemented this is they don't have to do it. They see it right there in front of them. Plus, they get to cross street. And in the future, because we really have the capability now, pre-plan information, that's where we go in and pre-plan an incident for, major locations like Jackson House, hospital, something like that. You can have that information too, right there on the computer. The other thing that the guys get a lot out of is seeing the address history. That tells us what kind of environment, in case the dispatcher happens to forget to tell us what the history is for a particular accident or incident, say like we're going to a medical call, but that person's known to have a gun or they're a violent offender or something like that. The guys can see that information. Now, law enforcement still gets all that. It's just fire and EMS that don't. And that's a state police rule, law, something. We're able to do it now under our system and do it legally, but the way they operate, we wouldn't have that. And then automatic dispatches. We have some policies out there right now where the county fire departments are dispatched together at the same time. or we're dispatched with Concord at the same time, sometimes for I-24 and things like that. Those are policies that exist. The dispatchers know. They do it automatically, and the response on the questionnaire was that they couldn't do that anymore, or they wouldn't do that. So for me, besides being pretty passionate about the thing to begin with, this is a big deal. This is a big step backwards just for the fire department. Other items of significance, you've heard me talk a lot about NFPA in the past. APCO is the other organization that the communications industry looks at. They look at NFPA and APCO together. State police have never been evaluated against those standards. We have been. That's what our ISO rating is based off of, our community's ISO rating. So that's important not only for the city, but the county fire departments as well. And that affects insurance ratings. We have an ISO rating of 3 right now. Now that's a percentage of the total rating, but and I can't tell you off the top of my head what specific percentage it is. I suspect it's one of the smaller ones. But these days, in the evaluation criteria that they provide, we're fighting for every point we can get. So the loss of points sets us back. That's one of the things that makes our community attractable sometimes to places we're trying to bring here for economic development. What's your ISO rating? What's their insurance rating going to be at the end of the day? It can have an impact on economic development is what I'm trying to say. Other things in the proposal or in the questions that we submitted that we got back, there were many pending, probably requires further study, depends. You could see them all listed up there, but there were too many of those that we can't have those hanging out there in order to make a decision on something like this. And then no project to date as large as ours. They've done small communities, and they've had bigger communities ask for it, like communities like ours. None of them took it. So I think what we're seeing in this, it becomes a line of demarcation there with the size of the community where they decide that their needs it's in their best interest to maintain their own service. I already told you that about the not wanting to waste tax dollars. So we're not going to bring you a half proposal. Brandon and I know better than that, and we're going to make sure you have as much information as possible. You know, by comparison, if you did this, and the state police will actively tell you they're not in the business of seeking dispatch services. They were asked, okay? They were asked to provide a proposal. But if we flipped this situation where we put this out for an RFP, okay, a request for proposal to provide dispatching service, not just from the state police, but from anybody. I think with the number of requests for information, the stuff that we still lack, you would have disqualified the proposal based on those things in that type of setting. If you can understand the comparison that I'm making there. And that's not this is a tough issue to discuss without trying to offend the state police. I'm not interested in offending the state police. I'm interested in making sure our community has the best service that it can have. And they have their situation of how they propose those services and offer those services. I think we're just in a different position. We're able to drill further down into it than other communities are typically able to because of the circumstances they're in. So here's probably what most of the discussion prior to today that has hinged around, what you've seen in the paper, what has come out through the grapevine, whatever. The KSP proposal has a capital cost in it of $910,000 to $1.25 million. And that's driven by whether we try to merge what we have, which you heard me say earlier, our vendor says we can't do it without buying parts on eBay and other places like that. They've got building and equipment. You know, one of the things they would want us to do is build them a building at Hickory for the expanded operation. So you're going to have a capital investment in Hickory for and their contract's only for 2 years. And then if at the end of that 2 years we were to not like what we got into, then we've got a capital investment in Graves County. That unless we were able to structure a contract where they would pay it back, I don't see the state doing that. You would have put that money into Graves and wouldn't get it back. Their annual operating cost for providing dispatch services is $700,000 a year. But that's not all. Okay, as you probably expected, that's not all. That's the number that's been touted. We have a $1.6 million budget right now, and I think $1 million was used somewhere. That's not all. Okay, if you deduct that from our 1.6 million, you get 900,000. But let's turn the page. Here's some additional transitional costs that you're going to have to be worried about. I guess you could call these maybe one-time costs, some of them anyway. You see the KSP upgrade there. That's the biggest number. But we're also going to have employee issues to worry about too. If a decision is made to transition, what are the employees that we have on staff over there probably going to do? They're going to look for other jobs, unless they're guaranteed a position at state police. And, no entity is going to guarantee that. They'll offer to interview for potential positions, but they're not going to guarantee that. So, if they want to go to state police, that's fine. If they don't, they're going to start to leave. And that leaves a big gap, because we would expect that this would be a 2-year transition probably, of how we're going to continue to provide the service here while we're setting up the service in Hickory. So you see some estimates about that. We really aren't for sure what that's going to be or how we would fill it. Mayfield did it by paying KSP dispatchers time and a half for their entire transitional period. So you can see that there could be substantial costs there. We've got some estimates there of what you might see. And now those are just transitional costs. Other transitional costs. The next is what we say our annual costs, what we project our annual costs would be. And this is the other side of the page. You see the contract for services up there at $698,000, but what you see at the bottom is $1.3 million. Because we're going to have to continue to provide things here. They're not taking the whole thing. They're just offering the people operation. We've still got to maintain all of our infrastructure, do all of our capital planning, and our own budgetary service. So you can see that it's not $698,000. It's $1.3 million is what we expect it to be. And you heard me say earlier our budget's $1.6 million now. So that's a long way from $1 million. Or 900,000 even. Unknown costs that remain out there. These are just some things that we've identified for sure. Every time we've submitted another request for information or we've had a meeting, we've identified additional things that are going to have additional costs associated with them. You heard me talking about the redundancy earlier. They proposed to connect to our equipment by a computer cable, which is a T1 line. But the redundancy side of that, the backup for that, is a microwave tower. And that's a line of sight item. There's not one in Hickory that's tall enough to do that. So we would have to erect a tower, buy the microwave equipment, buy property for the tower to sit on, and then maybe be able to use ours. If we're not able to use ours, we'll have to do the same thing on this end. We don't know what that cost is going to be, at least at this point. In addition to that, KSP operates on their own CAD software. They're not the same software that we have. So our mobile data terminals that we use today, we're not sure if those would be interoperable with what they have. If they don't, then we've got to upgrade again. We don't know what that cost is. And then the big one at the bottom is really the connectivity to KSP. At least under the current situation with the current radio system that we have, it doesn't appear that we can do it. Or if we can do it, we can Band-Aid it together for a time period. What got this conversation started besides staffing? Funding. You heard me talk about the landline funding. The CMRS funding is the cell phone stuff. It's the commercial mobile radio service fees that are associated with the cell phones that have not been fixed yet. As you all know, it's a KLC top legislative agenda item, as well as a KCO top legislative agenda item. And we're learning more about that, why it hadn't been addressed before now. There's agencies out there that aren't putting all their funding towards their 911 service like we are. We're putting all ours and then some, as you can attest to what's coming out of the general fund to take care of our operation. So it's hard for us to understand how anybody could be in that situation, but not all entities out there or communities out there are providing the same level of service that we are. We're at the front end of this. Now granted, we're at the end of life for the equipment that we have, but we're still at the forefront of the services that are provided, okay? No matter what comes out of this, what decision you make, you're going to, especially with CMRS money not being decided yet, you're going to have to figure out a different funding model. The landline funding model is continuous. So what's that mean? That means you got to put in more general fund money, or actually what our interlocal agreement says is we're supposed to address it, which it wasn't when we passed that 50% mark some time ago. The board never did recommend an increase to the lines. Now, we wouldn't recommend that now because the only people we would be taxing are the elderly, because that's about the only folks that have a landline left today. I have one myself, and I don't consider myself elderly, but I'm in the minority, I think. Most people are just dropping them. So we're losing that revenue is nosediving. The chart for it goes like this, and then it just drops, and that's all that can be said. There's communities that are looking at alternative models out there that are being creative, and they're looking at, and you can drop the $1.50 a month. That's the thing about it. That's just a model. You can drop that model and go with a new model that's more fair, that gets everybody involved. There's different types out there. That was one of the committees from the consultant report that Chief Barnhill was chairing to bring those things back, and he was able to obtain some examples. So either way, you still most likely have the expectation that you're going to have to deal with that at the end of the day, whether you want to or not. If you don't, you're going to add more general fund money to it, which is in a sense a tax too. So it's just a matter of what money stream you're using for it. Last slide. Does the KSP model fit the needs of Paducah and McCracken County? I don't think so. And Chief Barnhill doesn't think so, because of the things that we've outlined in this presentation. These are the things that we've been looking at to determine whether or not we think that service would be adequate for our community. And we don't believe it meets the standard that we have set or the expectation that our community has. The second piece of that was we were in the midst of reviewing our own operation to fully determine what service level changes we needed. And I can tell you, we didn't anticipate it lessening. There's lots of technological advancements out there, opportunities for making our service more efficient and a better operation, and that's what we were looking at towards the future when this came along. So that's still yet to be done and needs to be done at the end of the day. Our major concerns haven't been answered. There's unknown costs that still remain. The changes in funding structure still has to be addressed. And those areas that I highlighted earlier on another slide, the pendings, the probablys, and requires further study, have to be answered. Brandon and I have taken some criticism because of our questioning of these things. And we are not questioning the state police in terms of the level of service that they provide today. We're not doing that. We're questioning whether or not they would be able to provide the level of service expected if they took us on. I think that's a distinct difference. I have no desire to offend our friends in gray. We need them for other things. And I have many friends that I know. The post commander that just retired became a good friend of mine through many of the issues we were discussing. And we had differing views on this item. So, you know, I have no desire to offend them or make their service look like it's a bad service. I believe it works great for what they use it for right now. But I don't believe it fits what we need based on the reasons that you've seen. With that, I would leave it to Chief Barnhill right quick, and then we would be glad to take any questions you have.
I don't have more slides, so you can come comfortable with that. But I do just want to add a couple comments real quickly. We know and understand the importance of the decision that you all are fixing to be faced with. When we know the information provided to you all is usually what drives your decisions. I was told early on as a young detective, there's two ways to handle the investigation, the right way and the wrong way. Obviously, the wrong way is you determine the outcome, meaning you arrest the offender up front, and hopefully the facts will come along behind to support your decision. That's the wrong way of doing it. We provided all this, and the passion put into it by him was because the right way to do this is to provide the information up front and let those facts decide and determine the outcome. That's why it's important as much for you all as it is probably for our viewing audience to understand that unfortunately, what's been talked about the most is the dollars and cents, which should not be the priority in this decision. What should be the priority is what is the best service to the residents and or the people coming through this community. But as a dollars and cents question, there's a lot of questions in that. There's a lot of unknown costs and hidden costs that are going to come up. So we need to know those facts before we make our decision. We don't need to make our decision to flip the switch now and then regret that decision later. So, I mean, that's all I had to add to it. I appreciate what he's done, and as chairman of that board over there, he's put a lot of effort into it. So,
appreciate your passion, Chief. And if we are going to, I'll just speak for myself. If a transition of this magnitude, I definitely need all the information. If I'm going to make a decision to move away from where we are now. And I will echo what you said, just from my perspective. I'm not interested in lowering the standard. I think our folks deserve the best service possible. And I think we were elected to make sure that happens. So as we look at, you know, we marinate over this, and when it comes to that time to make a decision on where do we go from here, this will play a major part in the decision that I make.
Thank you. One other thing to add that maybe I didn't share is the city has 60% of the volume that goes through 911. And that's how that's how you all pay as well. You pay based on the volume. But we have 60% of the volume that goes on through that agency over there. The city does just by itself.
And Chief, explain why that's that way.
Well, we're the population center. I mean, all the activities here. People come here, people shop here, people work here. It's all right here. And most of it's in the city limits.
Isn't there a trend line, that supports that? I believe even in that consultant's report, it showed that trend line.
Yes.
Even increasing going forward,
yes.
Is it not?
What are the next steps that will happen in this?
Well, our purpose tonight was to just give you all an update. We had not done that yet. David's been over there for about 6 months now, I guess, and Brandon's anxious to get him back. So he was roughly on a 6-month timeline to begin with. So we felt we needed to give you an update because you hadn't had one. You needed to understand where we were right now. Recently, there was a subcommittee that was established to look at the proposal. The subcommittee voted on whether or not to make a recommendation to look further at the proposal by the full board. That was a 3-3 vote. The full board meets January the 15th. Yeah, January 15th, at which time we'll have a further discussion. And eventually something will come back to you from there if you don't make decisions on it independently. Ultimately, it rides with you.
So the full board could vote one way, but it would still come back to us.
I think what we determine is the importance of the subcommittee and the full board to make that recommendation. I think you all look to us as the leaders of these agencies to tell you what we think of this proposal. So that's the reason why, we push to say, do we support this or do we not as a board? And I think you all would want to hear that. If we come out and say, well, here it is, and either we don't tell you or you don't ask, then you're kind of left in the dark. So I think the important is to tell you we like it or we don't.
At the end of the day, there are two entities that formed the intergovernmental agreement, and that was the fiscal court and the city commission. So there are two parties to this agreement, even though there are 10 members of the 911 board, 11 members of the 911 board.
Commissioner, at the last 911 board meeting, there was a lot of discussion about taking a vote and sending it to each, the fiscal court and the commission for a recommendation. And the discussion kind of broke down that they didn't really seem to want to take a vote. They sent it back to this subcommittee to see how you all kind of listed the pros and the cons, and then that subcommittee split a 3-3. And I think it's really going to end up back here with the fiscal court and the commission. I don't know that you'll get a vote coming out of 911.
I think if ultimately it's going to reside with the two entities that put money into that system, then our colleagues across the street needs to hear this as well, because we have an opportunity here. We have a new fiscal court, and a decision this large that will affect so many people. Again, speaking for myself, I would want to hear all the information. I would want to see that information then make a decision on what I've seen.
Well, Commissioner, I don't mean to interrupt, but the one thing that's been very difficult for me to understand, and I've learned through this whole process, is that each one, county, city, as we all go into this process, everyone has a different goal to accomplish. I even learned that about KSP. They police different than we do. They police different than the sheriff's department does. I think everyone went into it looking as if it was going to be a black and a white kind of situation. There's so many gray areas. The McCracken County Sheriff's Department police is different, so their needs may be different than ours.
Let me say also, with the process going forward somewhat uncertain, to your point, Commissioner Abraham, you're absolutely right. You needed this information, and these gentlemen, myself, Commissioner Galt, as a representative, felt that obligation to you all to bring that forward and bring it forward now, and that's why we did.
Well, there's one area that's not gray is when you have an emergency and you pick up the phone.
Yeah.
That's where I was headed. That's exactly where I was headed. Because you're going to hear all these different things, but the one area where you can't is what your customer and what your consumer depends on.
And I think that should be the catalyst. That should be the focal point.
Sure. And either way, a new building has to be built, correct?
Well, that's one of the things that we were studying as a result of the consultant report, didn't get to fully finish. The consultant recommended that a new building needed to be taken care of, and whether it was a joint police fire facility or some other type of building where it could be incorporated into, they recommended we look for opportunities to do that. We've expanded our operation over there about as much as we can with the space that we have available. So the only logical next step is that we would have to look towards a new facility.
Well, if you stayed in that building, wouldn't it need some major work? I know I've called about the outside of it before.
Yes,
and
it would.
I haven't been inside it in quite a while, but when I was, it was lacking.
They call it the cave, the dispatchers do, because it's very dark in there, and they're quite limited in their environment.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, and I'm sure we're going to get more reports.
As you have questions, feel free to give us a call. As I said, Brandon and I have been deep in the weeds with this for quite some time, and it's very possible we left some things out. So we didn't do that intentionally, but feel free to call us at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Any commissioners' comments tonight?
Should have a lot of reading material.
Yeah. Any public comments tonight? Okay, we do have an executive session. I think Commissioner Wilson has that.
I move that the board go into closed session for discussion of matters pertaining to the following topic: a specific proposal by a business entity where public discussion of the subject matter would jeopardize the location, retention, expansion, or upgrading of a business entity as permitted by KRS 61.8101G.
Seconded.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Okay, and we will not be coming back to take action.
There you go.
Thank you.